episode of the Good Girls Get Rich podcast. I'm your host, Karen Yankovich, and I have Helen Hirsh Spence with me today. I'm so excited for you to meet Helen. We had like a 5-minute conversation. I was like, oh no, we need to talk about this on my show. So I'm excited to have her here with me today. She's a dynamic speaker and age inclusion advocate who's transforming the way we think about growing older with over 35 years in leadership across education, and now the founder of Top 60 Over 60. She brings deep insight and bold ideas to conversations about aging, equity, and the future of work. Her engaging, no-nonsense approach has made her a sought-after voice for media outlets, conferences, and organizations looking to better understand the opportunities of an age-diverse world. Helen is available for commentary, interviews, and features on topics ranging from longevity and leadership to social innovation and the economic impact of demographic change. Her book, Reset, Make the Most of the Rest of Your Life, will be launched in the spring of 2026. So I'm going to bring Helen up here with me. And Helen, I'm so excited to have this conversation.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much for being
here
today. Yeah. So Helen and I met it was through a LinkedIn connection, actually. I saw a post that an interview she had done with somebody that I knew. This is how it works, you guys. I saw an interview that she had done with somebody. I was intrigued by the interview and reached out to her, and we had a quick conversation. I actually wasn't quick. I was sitting in a parking lot, and I think we talked for way longer than I thought that we would.
The store almost closed on you, right?
But I was so intrigued by her perspective on how she talked about, in her bio, an age diverse world, that I wanted to have that conversation here. So Helen, why don't you tell us a little bit, behind the bio, tell us a little bit about you and what kind of brought you to this world of talking about top 60 over 60 or making the most of the rest of your life?
Easy answer. The reality is that in my mid-60s, I was losing my self-confidence. I felt like I was irrelevant, invisible, the typical kinds of feelings that I now recognize as having been beliefs, myths about aging, and it's called self-directed or internalized ageism. But I didn't know that that's what it was at that point. And so it was when I realized it, I thought, oh my God, if I feel this way, having had an outstanding career in leadership and in many different areas, not just in one, what does the average middle to older aged woman feel like when she hits this stage? And so I delved into that. I took courses on social entrepreneurship. I mean, having been in schools my entire life, I'm passionate about learning and growth, and always am very curious. And I ask too many questions and people get annoyed at me, but I really don't care, especially not at my age.
Which is so much fun, right? It's so much more fun to not care what people think about you.
Well, but that's one of the gifts of growing older. And that's one of the biggest gifts of growing older is caring less about what other people think about you, So I investigated, and then I realized, the problem is we don't have any really good role models as older adults. And we need to recognize the contributions, the value, and the respect and dignity that older adults actually deserve, but are not getting. And that's why I came up with the idea of Top 60 Over 60, which has expanded and gone different places, but which I still will do, hopefully in the near future. And, I just have been working constantly, and it's become like a passion project to help people like yourself and others recognize that old narrative of learn, earn, retire is dead. It was dead in the 20th century. And that we have 20 to 30 years longer to live, which is referred to as a longevity dividend. And we're not taking advantage of it. And as a society, we are penalizing older people because we still believe in the old, outdated notions that life ends at 65, essentially. So
right.
I'm here to broadcast that that's not the case.
My 65th birthday is next week, so I hope it doesn't end at 65.
It doesn't end. It only, you know what? The reality is it begins at 65.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I agree with you. And it shifts, it changes. I was just saying, so I don't normally talk about time of year or whatever, but it happens to be that we're doing this interview with Thanksgiving week, and I'm hosting Thanksgiving at my house, and it's a ton of people, like 17 adults and 7 kids or something like that. And I was saying to my partner the other day, I really want to make some more cookies and bake a cheesecake, but I can't do what I was able to do for Thanksgiving 20 years ago. So there is a reality to there being a shift in, but I will say it's a conscious shift, right? Like I could have done it, right? But I didn't want to kill myself to do it. Like I want to enjoy the lead up. I want to enjoy hosting and having everybody at my house and not be exhausted, right?
Yeah.
So maybe 20, 30 years ago, I could have done that and not been exhausted. And now I don't feel like I can do that. So but I'm making these conscious choices as I'm stepping into each new year and each new chapter of my life, right? On how I want to spend my time and how, and how I want to create my career, right? How I want to create my career.
For sure.
I loved one of the things that you said, and that's really what I want to dive into is we don't remember or we don't realize or we don't think about the fact that because we live longer lives, we have longer productivity opportunities, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, I don't think you're saying work yourself to death, right? Work till you die, right? So tell us a little bit about that, right? Tell us a little bit about that. What does that look like?
Okay, so for you,
somebody in their 60s and 70s and 80s.
So I'm 76 at the moment, and if I think back at younger years, 76 would have been absolutely ancient. But the truth of the matter is, one, I don't feel it. I don't behave as if my life is ending. What we have to recognize today is that we've got a multi-stage life. And this is what I would encourage a lot of younger people or people who are hitting their 40s and 50s, in particular for women. There's so much gendered ageism out there, which really refers to the intersection of sexism and ageism. So it's a double whammy for we women. We only are getting into our stride and into our 50s or early 60s when our families are more or less off and launched, so to speak. And we can really devote the attention to ourselves or to whatever it is we choose. And that's when we can really reinvent ourselves if that's what we want, or we can do it later. But there's no real reason why we have to stay in the same paradigm as our parents were in. In other words, if you're 45 and you're not happy with what you're doing, my recommendation to you is take some time off, a gap year, a sabbatical, whatever the hell you want to call it. It doesn't matter. The point is you can get back into the workforce, although it's much more difficult as an older woman than it is when you were in your 30s, but you can if that's what you want. But you can also maybe start something new. You can get a new career. You can go back to school. Universities are going to have to shift to accommodate older populations because we've hit an age cliff, especially in the United States. I live in Canada at age 18. There are no more 18-year-olds coming up in the numbers that there were before. In Canada, we have more people over the age of 65 than we do under the age of 14. And that's been the case for over 10 years.
Wow.
In the United States, it's true as well. There are something like, last time I looked, over 12,000 Americans turning 65 every day. You have far more older people by 2030 than you do have young children. So that requires an adaptation, a readiness that neither businesses nor individuals are ready for. But we've already seen, we're a little bit ahead of you in that case, that there's a talent shortage with all the politics going on, which I won't get into, but with less immigration and so on. We need to take advantage of the experience and expertise that you, Karen, and I could bring to businesses or to entrepreneurship or to any institution or anything that we want. But we've been cut off traditionally because of our gray hair. And when I talk about gendered ageism, I want you to recognize that I could be a bald, beer-bellied older gentleman, and I would be considered distinguished. But with my gray hair, I'm over the hill. And that's the transformation. It's that narrative that we really have to shift.
Well, and I think it is shifting. I mean, one of the things you said was, take a gap year. And I heard collectively the universe, women in the universe going, how do I describe that on my LinkedIn profile? How do I describe that? And that, like, when you maybe take a few years off, if you're having children and you decide you want to take a few years off, we've been taught to worry about that gap.
That's right.
Instead of embracing that gap and owning what we've done in those years and then just moving forward from that space.
But you could not have done it if you didn't have people, my generation, who was a feminist in the 60s and 70s and who fought for maternity leave and so on and parental leave for men as well. But you can do that today much more easily. At least you can here. I know it's a bit more difficult in the States. However, it still exists. Those possibilities do exist, and we need to recognize them, and we need to really fight for them. And those of us who are a little bit older, who've done that, we can support you, and we need to support you. You need to understand that your belief in aging is misguided. The brain continues to grow. There are lots of advantages and benefits to growing older. For instance, we actually have more connections, neural connections than before. We have crystallized intelligence. We have better emotional regulation. We have better judgment and perspective. And this is all because of lived experience. It's not because of intelligence necessarily. That helps. But it's not the only thing. So if you listen to my TEDx talk later, which I think we'll put in
the show notes, which is amazing.
It's all about embracing age with a longevity mindset. And a longevity mindset just means a growth mindset focused on the positives of aging. And there's enough psychology out there to understand that if you think positively about growing older, this is a study done by Becca Levy. She has a great book out. I think it's called Breaking the Age Code, but I may be mistaken and I've gotten somebody else's name mixed up with it. You will live 7.5 years longer with a positive mindset about aging, and you will heal faster. You'll have less cognitive decline. That is how absolutely important our mindset is, especially as we grow older.
Oh, so important. Well, let's talk about entrepreneurism in this whole conversation, because I've been seeing a lot of studies lately, and I don't have any in front of me, but I can find them if anybody wants them. You can message me on LinkedIn about how women over 50 are the fastest growing demographic of entrepreneurs.
That's right.
And I love hearing that, because I feel like, I'm on the other side of that, right? But my generation, we were taught, you get married, you have kids, you have a job, and you stay there till you retire, right? So it's just the women now that are over 40 and over 50 and over 60 that are realizing, wait, what if I don't go back to work after the pandemic? Or what if I don't want to do this anymore?
That's right.
Or in my case, I really wanted, I've had entrepreneurial endeavors my whole life, but I had a paycheck job up until like 10 years ago. But I decided I wanted to be able to have more freedom in my life, to be able to spend time with my kids and their kids as they started getting married and having kids.
Exactly.
And that's why I chose to do what I do. If it had been 10 or 20 years earlier, I don't know that the world would have been ready for that, right? But the world is starting to shift and being more ready for women entrepreneurs. And I think that to me is one of the reasons why we're seeing statistics like that, because women are starting to realize, wait, what if I do something different?
That's right. Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And entrepreneurship, so there's lots of studies that actually prove that those of us who are over 50, or in particular, I think it's a Kaufman study, that older entrepreneurs are more successful. And it makes sense because we have networks that are established. We may have finances that are established. We have the experience that gives us a performance edge. So it's not surprising that older entrepreneurs may be more successful at their endeavors. So I don't know the statistics about women, but I know there are more women who are getting into entrepreneurship over the age of 50 for the simple reason that they are left out of the hiring of typical jobs, no matter what. And the average woman who's over 50 who tries to become an employee again often takes up to 2 years to find a job that is way below her pay level and her skill level. Yeah. So they give up and they become entrepreneurs. And you have to think about what you really value in life. If you value family connection and interpersonal relationships, and you don't have time for it because you're killing yourself, from 9 till 7 every night. Yeah. That's no life. And, young people today get it a lot better. They've seen our generation, or at least my children have, they're Gen X and millennials. They know that, that it's a short time that they have to spend with their children. And that's when they wanted to, that's one of the things they want to do. And they want to be respected for having those beliefs. And they're looking for jobs where they've got the kind of benefits that will give them the flexibility that they want or need.
Yeah.
So
So,
kudos to
you
them.
mentioned women that are kind of just not able to get where they want to get in the workforce.
Okay.
I've been talking about that for years. To me, when you take control of your own destiny, like
Mhm.
with an entrepreneurial endeavor, or at least your own brand, right? Really
Right.
leaning into the skills you have, the experience that you have, and the expertise that you have, I think we can kind of just like say, screw the glass ceiling. Like the glass ceiling, like it's there, just go around it, right? Or ignore it, or do like when you hit the glass ceiling, it doesn't stop. It doesn't mean you have to stop. You can just move on then, move somewhere else where there is no. And I firmly believe it comes down to having, I think, a community of people that to support you with this, because we're having this conversation, but not everybody has people in their lives that can have these kinds of conversations with them. But also you have to be brave and confident in your skills to really say, what can I do? If I've hit my top here,
Yeah.
what can I do that's different than this? And it takes guts, because we were not brought up to know that there was something else that we could do.
And I've been giving courses on transitioning, finding purpose, all of this sort of transition territory that can happen as a result of divorce or a new job or being nudged out or totally eliminated from the workforce. It really is probably one of the most um, challenging parts of life, because you're also, as I say, aging, and with aging, and because of our society has spent so much time perhaps uh, obsessed with youth, and we've been a youth-centric society. I mean, look at television, look at media, look at magazines, podcasts. I mean, how often do you see, well, now we're beginning to see Isabella Rossellini and other people with L'Oreal, because they're ahead of the curve. They're smart.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
getting the generation of women who have the most wealth
Right.
on their covers and so on. And
Right.
it's called the longevity economy. And we need to develop that better. And we need to help people understand that this is here for the long haul. We are not replacing ourselves birth rate wise in any country. At this point, only underdeveloped countries, a few of them, still have more young people than older people.
Wow.
So, yeah, no, we're
That's
on.
an interesting concept to think about. I had not really thought about that.
Well, you need to think about it, because that's the future. And when we talk about the future of work, we have to reincorporate all sorts of people into the workforce that are now typically older. That means we have to reskill, upskill, get them credentialed, which is an opportunity for colleges and universities that no longer have young people attending. They need to, rethink how they are going to offer to be able to stay sustainable, financially. So there are tons of implications. That's what I've been working on here in Ottawa, is looking at longevity and helping others understand this is a mega trend equal to climate change and technology, and yet we are not thinking about it in those terms, and we need to, for survival, for survival of the economy, and also to keep older adults out of the healthcare system. If they're engaged, if they're working, they stay cognitively, socially engaged.
Right.
They have benefits. They have all sorts of things that may enable them to stay healthier for longer. Because living longer is totally irrelevant if it's not a better life or a good life, right?
Yeah, I agree. So let me ask you this: you have a lot more background in education than I have. So I feel like I'm seeing changes in education, in that I definitely think, education I think education saves us in so many ways, right? Like you can, I'm at the same time, I think we're also recognizing experience.
Mm-hmm.
Right. As we're recognizing education. Right. And I was actually having a conversation with my son. So this doesn't really fall into the ageism category, but I was having a conversation with my son.
It does. Ageism goes both ways, Karen.
Yeah. So he works for a company it's a big company. They're having massive layoffs, and he has not been laid off, but everybody on his team's been laid off. So it's demoralizing in many ways for him.
Yeah.
So he was looking at other opportunities, and he was like, well, I don't have this particular degree. I don't have that particular degree. And I said to him, here's the thing. Somebody up higher in HR is saying, and we need this particular degree for this particular position, but the person that's hiring you, they want your experience. They want to know you can do the job, you know how to do the job, you've done the job before, and you can do the job for them. They don't really care as much about that. So to me, that almost comes down to the specialty certifications and things like that. Like, I do think a degree is still immensely valuable, but at the same time, I think we need to recognize that these specialty certifications are something that is really, it helps with your personal brand, right? Like, everybody has, not everybody, but many people have a college degree, but not everybody has the specific certification and the specific skill. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I do think that there's such a great need now for technical skills and other skills because of AI. For instance, knowledge workers are the ones who are going to be knocked out of the employment cycle probably first, because
that was exactly the reason for these layoffs in the company that he's at.
That's right. So, which is totally unreasonable too, because we need them in order to manage the systems and whatnot. I mean, hiring or HR is a great example. I mean, a lot of the AI hiring is so biased, one against women, against older people, against all sorts of other, classifications of, race and so on. It's a real problem, but it's a model that has been developed by men teaching AI what it is that they need. And so there isn't the diversity. So we need that diversity in the workforce to continue to work with AI. I don't know I hope I'm making some sense there.
No, you are. It makes sense. It does make sense. And, I also, told him, and would tell anybody else listening, pull on all that expertise when you're stepping into whatever your next chapter looks like, right? Because it's that expertise that we think is, because it comes easy to us, isn't as valuable as the other things that we think people are looking for. But it's really the expertise.
But I think, however, we have to be creative about that and not stick in that box of the expertise we have. Think outside the box. Think, where else can my training or my expertise be used? So I was trained as an educator. However, I can assure you that most of the skills I've learned are extremely valuable in every other realm, because I can listen, I can interact with people. I have the interpersonal skills, the soft skills, and that is what is emphasized today in the working world, are those soft skills that many people have lost along the way because they're interacting with machines rather than with people. So I would always say, for somebody, don't downplay any credentials you have, play up whatever you have, and think how you can explain how valuable your expertise is in wherever it is that you are applying for a job, But
I also think that in many cases, entrepreneurism is going to help them get to their financial goals faster than getting a job. I mean, there are certainly jobs that pay well, but there's also a lot of people that get kind of stuck in this place where, first of all, they don't know if they're going to be able to keep their job, right? So you don't have as much control over. It used to be when you were employed, that was the security. Now it's the opposite. Now, if you are leaning into your personal skills and entrepreneurism, that's more security than a paycheck.
I wouldn't agree. I wouldn't necessarily say that that's the case, Karen, but it depends on the individual and what the job is. What we do know is that in the olden days, we had companies that were very solicitous towards their employees. They got gold watches at the end of the time. They respected them. Right. Retention was everything. They were loyal to them, and their employees were loyal to them because they got benefits and everything. That no longer is the case. And therefore, these young people who are looking for jobs are switching very often more readily and more easily because they're not finding what they want. But it's also because the companies are not committed in the same way as they were to their employees in times past. Now, I understand that. I mean, that's the evolution of work and what's changing. So, there's a lot of literature out there on leadership and what leaders need to do in order to retain employees. And one of them is to give them lots of opportunities to change roles within the organization so these people don't get bored or soured or unengaged in their jobs. So there's lots that can be done. There's a lot to be learned. And it's a shift right now. We're going through a huge, huge shift.
Yeah. So what do you see ahead? What do you see ahead as you're moving into your next chapters, and and what you're doing with the 60 over 60 and the book and other things that you've got going on? Where are you leaning into?
Yeah, well, I'm leaning into this in a big way because I think there's more and more need for young people in particular to understand that they have a multi-stage life. They can have like what's called a portfolio career in which they change careers because they are going to be working into their 80s and 90s as the norm. Their life expectancy is on average 100 years. And that means they could be 120 or they could be 80. But the reality is they're going to be working a lot longer. And so there's going to be a need for them to be more flexible, more understanding of the changes that are going to take place. And everything is going to shift. And it's starting, but it's extremely slow. In North America, we are not age ready at all. So that's what I'm working on. I'm working on working with organizations and businesses to help them prepare for this future of multi-generational workforce. And that's really important. People don't understand that we now have up to 5 generations working at the same time. And their values are very similar. Their styles of communication may be very different. And therefore, there's sometimes some conflict. But the conflict can be easily resolved if you start talking to people about it. So I really am a firm believer also in what I refer to as reciprocal mentorship. So we can no longer think that we as elders have something to offer wisdom-wise to young people. It's not a one-way street. I have as much to learn from the young person as they have to learn from me. And that's always been why I've been passionate about being in schools as I was in education, in public schools and in private, independent schools, because I've learned, and probably the best experiences of my life are a result of the encouragement of students I've had who said, you could do this, Mrs. Spence, go give it a try. And they were right. And they encouraged me. So it goes both ways. We have to be open-minded, obviously, too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. So interesting. It's so interesting. Well, listen, I love the idea. I love the mindset shift or the identity shift of stepping into your next decade, whatever your next decade is, knowing that there's more decades ahead, that you can do whatever you want. You could work if you want. You could sit on the beach if you want. You could play golf if you want, or you can do all of those things if you want. Right. And that we're not locked into, a model that we thought we were going to be locked into.
The point is you can do things differently now than you could have before without being a privileged white person.
Yes.
You can step out of that paradigm and move yourself forward in different ways. And, money isn't everything. I know capitalism is God at the moment, but it doesn't mean that there's only one type of system in which you have to operate. You can operate with kindness and, honesty and trustworthiness, and sometimes just being a good person means a hell of a lot more than what you bring in, or in terms of what you do. But now is the time to start thinking differently, because especially if you are young, because it's not the way it was. And I mean, we see it already. We have children who are going back living with their parents because they cannot afford it. And that's the other thing I wanted to mention, is that if we live longer, we need to be financially secure for a longer period of time, which necessitates us working longer.
Yeah.
So it's not going to just be frivolous. It's going to be by design if you're lucky, by default if you just lose track.
Right.
So you need to be conscious of what lies ahead. And be optimistic. That's all I can say. That makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to spreading this message and talking more to more audiences to help them understand. And I guess, and I believe in role models. And I believe that when I get going with the top 60 over 60, there will be that'll move some people forward because they'll see it. But I feel like I'm a living role model, having started something new at age 67.
I love that. Well, so you have a newsletter that comes out regularly called Age Sense. It's a LinkedIn newsletter. So we'll put the link to your LinkedIn in the show notes, and the link to your newsletter. I'm assuming that if we're subscribed to the newsletter, we'll get some information on when your book is coming out, right? Because I know the book is almost ready for pre-sale. So that would be great. And then, Helen and I met and having conversations around speaking engagements, right? So will say to you, and I will say to anybody listening, if you have an audience of people that need to hear this message, reach out to Helen, because she, I think you're a leader in this. I told you a lot of people about this topic, and this is a perspective that I hadn't heard yet, the way that you described it. So I appreciate you bringing this down to a level that we can all understand and that we can all relate to. And that's exciting, right? It's exciting to think about stepping into a next chapter with excitement and hope and positivity around what it could be, and watching it unfold in a fun, positive way, as opposed to thinking, okay, every day another bone is going to hurt, there's
It'll hurt. It will hurt, but
right.
Get over it.
Right. Get over it and do it anyway, right? Buy the cookies, and make something else, right? Yeah.
Look at it as an adventure to explore,
Yeah.
It is. It really is. And there's a book out there called The U-Curve of Happiness that shows that when you're a young child, and an older adult, those are the best times in your life. That's really hard to convey to somebody in their 30s and 40s who think they're living their best life.
Right.
But it gets better.
Yeah. How fun is that?
Yeah, I know.
Helen, thank you so much for this conversation. This has been great. I am very much looking forward to your book and to keeping in touch with you on an ongoing basis. And I think that this is a conversation we all need to be having more of. So thanks for starting the conversation.
Well, I welcome it. And I thank you very much, Karen, for having me on your show, because I'm delighted to talk about it.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And for you listening, make sure that you're connected to Helen. Make sure that you're connected to me on LinkedIn. We've both got a lot of things coming up in the next year that you might want to be interested in checking out. So, and then come on back here next week for another episode. We'll see you then.